Well, an important day for the country, for the Indian Navy. It's not often that you induct a frigate, a destroyer and a submarine all at once. Joining us now to tell us his views on this development and look at the larger concerns that India has in the Indian Ocean and the Asia-Pacific region. Admiral Arun Prakash, the former Navy chief, is also a war hero. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Considering how slow Admiral, it's been for India to construct warships, firstly because of delays in placing orders, and secondly just in terms of manufacture itself, how significant is it that we've got 3 naval combatants entering service today?
Well, I think it's a great day for the Indian Navy. It's a red letter day because not many navies in the world have had an occasion like this. As you said, a destroyer, a frigate, and a submarine entering service on the same day. And each one of them top of the line, state-of-the-art, powerful platforms. They will add considerably to the Navy's fighting power and send out a good message to the Indo-Pacific that the Indian Navy is a force to reckon with. So it's a very significant occasion for us.
Admiral, just in terms of manufacturing techniques, we now build ships like the Shivalik class or the Project 17A class, the Nilgiri class, in a modular fashion. They're built in pieces and then put together. And this is a best practice worldwide. It's taken time coming to India, but as we try and speed up the process of manufacture, how is this technique of construction important?
Yes, that's the way that modern shipbuilding is going, that you prefabricate, you outfit the section, put the cabling, the wiring, as much of the equipment as you can, and then you mate the sections together. It cuts down tremendously on the time. Now, I think we made fairly good progress in this aspect, but perhaps more needs to be done because as you can see, the build times of our ships are between 6, 7, 8 years, sometimes more. And if you compare these times with other countries, other shipbuilding nations, they don't come out very well. So I think we need to consolidate and build on this technique. Perhaps our workers need to get more productive. But the other factor that holds us back is that much of our equipment, sensors and weapons comes from foreign sources. And often there is a delay in their delivery. And when that happens, then there's nothing that the shipyard can do. But I think certainly we need to work on our shipbuilding techniques and innovate as much as we can.
Admiral, I think one of the most commendable aspects of our naval growth has been the design of warships. These are largely designed by the Navy itself, naval designers. And the fact is that we build warships to an Indian specification from ground up. These aren't imports which are then modified for India. There are very few countries who are actually able to do that. And we don't have any reason to import a large number of warships from outside anymore. We can do it all ourselves, from nuclear submarines to frigates and even and smaller ships. So as we talk about engineering prowess as a nation, how is this actually a significant achievement?
It is indeed a most significant achievement because there are just a handful of countries which can design and build their own warships. And we've built warships from patrol boats to aircraft carriers and including submarines, diesel and nuclear. So ship design is something that we've mastered. But even more remarkable is the fact that many of our sensors and weapons are acquired from different sources. And integrating those into a fighting machine, a combat system, is an extremely difficult exercise. And that's something that people really marvel at because we've managed to integrate Russian equipment with French, Israeli weapons and sensors and so on, and very successfully. So apart from the ship design aspect, which is most creditable, we need to also recognize that our electronic integration of different systems of different origin is something truly remarkable and not achieved by many countries.
One more aspect that strikes me before we talk about the larger issues is just the design of the ships themselves, the hull design. The Nilgiri sits low in the water. It obviously comes out of a great deal of confidence in the preceding class, the Shivalik class. The Surat has an extremely broad beam, and they operate in extremely difficult sea states, given the monsoon and other conditions. This obviously reflects experience, but also a certain finesse in manufacture and design competence, right?
So, as you know, the first warship we ever built was also called the Nilgiri.
Yes.
But that design was bought out from the British, Messrs. Vickers shipbuilders. It was bought out, and having built 5 or 6 ships on that design, we evolved our ship designers evolved from the Nilgiri to the Godavari class to the Delhi class, and it's been a steady process of evolution based on experience, on feedback from the users and operators and so on. And as you said, the conditions, the sea conditions, the weather conditions in the Indian Ocean are quite different from the North Atlantic, for which these ships were originally designed. So now we've mastered this art, and our ships are now optimally designed and built for the conditions in which they are going to operate, that is the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So this is something really, something to be proud of, that our ship designers have mastered the art and our shipbuilders have learned to build to the designs given to them.
But the bottom line, sir, is having conquered that is orders. If you don't order, we can't sustain. And we've lost technology or the ability to build in the past, for example, with diesel-electric submarines, when for years and years we didn't, we had an entire line of submarines, the HDW submarines, no fresh orders were made. And so all of those people ended up, trained labor, trained engineers quitting, going elsewhere or retiring. At a time when China has constructed 148 odd ships in the last 10 years and we have done 33, isn't that the biggest problem? We are not ordering ships. The more you order, the faster they get built.
Yes, I'm afraid that's a shortcoming in our system of decision making, and that's not applicable only to shipbuilding. You will see it happening in the aerospace industry also. Decision making is extremely slow, bureaucratic hurdles, bureaucratic objections on file, long discussions take place. I think there's a serious need to streamline this whole issue. Shipyards, aircraft factories, manufacturing facilities must be kept in continuous stream. That is, serial production must take off. And that applies to aircraft, as ships and submarines. So in the past, we've defaulted there. We've had long voids where we've not placed any orders. And as you said, the skills have been frittered away. So I don't think we should let that happen again. My view is that actually we need a ministry, a full-fledged ministry of defense production and technology. Right now, there's a Department of Defense Production under the Ministry of Defense. A whole lot of bureaucrats sit there and take decisions in their own time. And we've suffered delays in every aspect of decision making, and that has had a very harmful effect on the skill, consolidation and so on. So I think a separate ministry with a full-fledged minister needs to look after this. Defense technology and defense production is most vital. It has an impact not only on our national security, but also on our status as a global power. I mean, you can't be a global power if you're importing major weapon systems from across the world.
Admiral, it's also sound economic sense. Building a warship doesn't just fuel the Navy or keep the Navy working. It fuels Indian industry. Each ship generates thousands of jobs. So when one creates an ecosystem, it generates jobs, it generates wealth, it generates infrastructure, competence, and a more streamlined system. So it feeds into the economy, right?
Absolutely. And that's a fact that has not been adequately recognized or acknowledged by the politicians and by the bureaucratic setup. Building a ship will generate employment, it will encourage MSMEs, it will skill the youth, it will add tremendously to the economy. So building a ship or devoting funds to shipbuilding is not an expense. Actually, it will benefit the country in many ways. And China is a good example. China went into this kind of thing. They started off by reverse engineering items of Soviet origin, and they pursued technology and acquisition and industrialization in such a focused manner that today China is one of the leading manufacturer and exporter of arms, whereas we happen to be the second largest importer of arms because we neglected this aspect or underrated it.
The United States considers China as a near peer. Some would suggest in certain areas the Chinese may actually be ahead of America, even from a technology standpoint. Could you reflect on the growth of the Chinese Navy in the last 10, 15 years and its implications for us in our region?
Yes, I think that's something that needs to be looked at very seriously. As you said, China is a peer competitor of the USA. As far as naval shipbuilding is concerned, they have already overhauled the US Navy. They have more ships today, about 50 more ships than the US Navy can field. And they say in a decade or so, they'll be far ahead of the US Navy. And the reason is that they have built capacity. Today, the Chinese shipbuilding capacity is overwhelmed the US shipbuilding capacity by a factor of 200 or 300, and that's not an exaggeration, because they focused sharply on this. As I said, as soon as they had a breakdown, ideological breakdown with the Soviet Union, they decided to branch off independently. They undertook a massive reverse engineering campaign, and over the years they made mistakes, they probably had disasters, but they persevered, they funded, and they built up the infrastructure. And today they are a leading nation as far as arms, weapon systems, etc. are concerned. They've just launched a landing platform dock, which is capable of launching fixed-wing aircraft with an electromagnetic catapult, and will carry UCAVs also. At the same time, they've also displayed two aircraft, which are supposed to be the first and second of their type of sixth generation fighter aircraft. So in all spheres of defense production, they have focused sharply, they funded it, they pursued it resolutely, and they are where they are today because they deserve to be there. Whereas we have been indifferent and even neglectful of defense production. And today we are, obliged to many countries, 6, 7 countries on which we are dependent for components that go into your fighting platforms: Russia, Ukraine, France, Israel, USA, you name it, and we are importing items from there. So even when you claim that a platform is 70% indigenous, hello, the remaining 30% still come from abroad. And should any of these countries which I've listed, should they get upset with you and hold back a nut, bolt, a magnetron, or any component, your platform will be high and dry.
It's quite remarkable,
So
isn't it?
self-reliance, Atmanirbharta is a very noble and desirable goal which we must pursue resolutely.
It's quite remarkable, Admiral, that we've got Ukrainian gas turbines fitted on Russian ships and delivered to India, as a recent Krivak-class frigate, Tushil, was commissioned in Russia. It's amazing that we can actually do that. It says something about, I suppose, our foreign policy, but it's remarkable, two nations at war, and yet we managed to take an engine from Ukraine, get it to Russia, get the Russians to install it, sail that ship around the world to serve in the Navy. Could you reflect on that?
It speaks well of our diplomats that we can, the two countries at war with each other, and we need very vital components from both. So, and Tushil is not the only ship. We've got gas turbines manufactured by Zoria company of Ukraine, but in a whole series of our ships.
Including
And
Surat.
there are some ships under construction which also need these gas turbines. And to my understanding, they are still on their way, or we will get them sooner or later.
Admiral, a final question. You've been a fighter pilot. There is very serious talk now on India acquiring 26 Rafale jets for the Indian Navy for our aircraft carrier Vikrant. In the context of China putting several aircraft carriers now to C3, how important is it for us to acquire the Rafale fighter aircraft, given what we are seeing in terms of the fighter aircraft complements on board Chinese warships, Chinese aircraft carriers?
Well, if we get the Rafale as and when we get it, then it will certainly be a powerful response to what China is fielding. But remember that China is going to have 4 aircraft carriers at sea. They will be operating aircraft which they design and manufacture themselves, the J-20 or whatever. Whereas Rafale will come from France, and again we will be dependent on France for it. So all the more important that there is a carrier-based aircraft on the drawing board with in Bangalore somewhere, which is called the twin-engine deck-based fighter. But before we get there, there are many other things on the way. There is Tejas Mark 1 and AMCA and so on. It's all a question of decision making. At the highest level, we need to take decisions that we should go ahead, and then once we decide, then we should fund them and place orders, even tentative. So 26 Rafale for the Indian Navy are most welcome as and when they come. But in the long run, if we want to go to stand up to China, then we need to put our own aircraft of our own design and manufacture on the decks of our own ships.
All right, Admiral Arun Prakash, always wonderful speaking to you. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.